Inside the stories that affect you. This is Inside KELOLAND.
I'm Perry Groten. Thanks for joining us. It's a taboo subject that many don't want to talk about, but talks of suicide need to be taken seriously. Tonight we talk about the problem at hand and the resources available throughout KELOLAND that will hopefully save a life. Then it's time for a little history lesson on the nationality of some of the first people to call Minnehaha County home. Learn about their connection to a far-reaching part of Norway. When someone takes his or her own life, family and friends are often left with a lot of hurt, unanswered questions, and wondering what they could have done to help save their loved one. 1 week from today starts National Suicide Prevention Week. Now, joining us tonight to share some of the resources available in KELOLAND is the Helpline Center Suicide Prevention Director Sherry Nelson and Diana Lee. Thanks for joining us for Inside KELOLAND. Well, Sherry, give us an idea, first of all, what does the Helpline Center do to assist people who are struggling with thoughts of suicide?
Anyone who is feeling suicidal, or if you have a loved one who is suicidal, you can contact us at the 1-800 number, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and that number is 1-800-273-8255. And so the Helpline Center answers the calls of people who are dealing with suicide and struggling with suicide. And we talk them through how they're feeling, we assess their suicidal risk, and help them to develop a safety plan to ensure that they are safe.
Are we seeing more and more calls related to suicide?
We are. We are seeing an increase in calls, and you know, I see that as a positive thing because that means that people are calling to get the help that they need. And you know, part of suicide, mental health, it's surrounded by a lot of stigma. And I know there's been a lot of talk regarding suicide in the past few months. And so with Suicide Prevention Month coming up, we are talking more about how do we get that awareness out there. And so I think that the more that we get that message out there that it's okay to talk about suicide, we're finding that, you know, we are getting more of those calls for people reaching out for help.
And talk about some of the events you have coming up to draw attention to suicide prevention.
Yeah, absolutely. The week of September 9th through the 15th is National Suicide Prevention Week. And, excuse me, we are holding a couple of different events. So on World Suicide Prevention Day, which is on Monday the 10th, we are doing a candlelight walk. And that will start at 7:30 p.m. Downtown at Washington Pavilion Sculpture Garden. And so people can, we will start there and we will do a candlelight walk with, prior to that, a short program, and then a candlelight walk walking downtown and honoring those who have lost loved ones to suicide, and also spreading the awareness and prevention for suicide prevention.
Okay. Well, Diana, you have been personally touched by suicide. Share a little bit about your story.
Yes, I have been. On October 14th, 2017, I found out what the worst day of your life can be. And that was the day that my daughter died by suicide. And people ask, why did that happen? That's the most common question anybody asks. And there's no one answer. People become helpless and lose their hopefulness, and they don't always tell anybody about it. So more people knowing about the Helpline Center will be wonderful. I had no idea such a facility, such an organization existed before my daughter's death. And had I known, maybe she would have called, maybe I would have called. Maybe I would have been involved enough and heard some of the symptoms and some of the characteristics of people who might be considering harming themselves.
And you were not aware of the warning signs at the time, so you couldn't recognize that, that your daughter was struggling.
No, I wasn't. And she didn't tell everybody each problem that she had. She shared with one family member that when she was talking about her daughter, she said, I've done my job, I'm done. And her daughter was in college. And that's not a good thing to hear. And yet that plus she had a heart condition and she was suffering from a lot of reactions of drugs and complications. And no one heard all of the pain, and no one heard all of those symptoms either.
So what was it like for you in the days and weeks and following your daughter's death?
The first thing that happens is complete shock and denial. I was in Pierre waiting for opening weekend, you know, the the state holiday, pheasant season opening. So I was out there ready to go out for opening day, and got the phone call that her husband Greg couldn't find her and hadn't been in touch with her since morning. So he called me and it's, you know, have you heard from her? Yes, I did in the morning. She called. She said, have a great day. And I got back to her and said, yes, I will. And that was the last I heard.
And what did you do to seek help for yourself then? Well,
you know, the first thing you do, I came tearing back to Sioux Falls. We were all together at the house when the police were called, and the only thing I could think of, because of her heart condition, was her heart had failed, and she had died in her car. She was a realtor, and she was alone in her car a lot, so she was somewhere out there. Or there had been reports of a man trying to get female realtors to show them empty houses. At the time, that day, in fact, was a warning at their staff meeting. So there was the fear that that's what had happened. On that drive back from Pierre alone in the dark, I had no idea. I never thought of suicide. Just did not enter my mind. So when the policeman, when she was found, there was a community search out in a park. We were all on our way out there to help. On the way out, they called and said, "Don't come, and we'll be there shortly." And when he came and told us what had happened, I was just totally shocked, completely shocked. And then you don't remember anything. You don't know what's going on. You have no idea how to plan a memorial service for your child. No one should have to write an obituary for their child. And those things are, you do them and you don't even remember a lot of it.
Well, Diana didn't see warning signs. A lot of people don't. Sherry, what are some of the warning signs that people need to look out for?
Yeah, some of the warning signs would be if people are giving away prized possessions, if you find them acting differently or maybe more hostile, a change in their mood, whether it be a positive change or a negative change. I think sometimes when people may be depressed and then all of a sudden there's a change for the best, I think people think that, oh, they're better. But realistically, that doesn't happen overnight. That may be a point where they may have decided that they want to take their life. So looking at some of those warning signs, oftentimes we do find that people will share warning signs at least a week prior to them actually attempting suicide. And it may be a small warning sign that they may share, or it may be right out saying, you know, I want to harm myself, I want to kill myself. And we need to take any type of warning sign seriously.
And Diana, you share your story with the public. Tell us about that you want others to know about, raise awareness about this yourself.
How that came about is when you have a death in your family that is by suicide, the Helpline Center sends information out, and they'll send it to you, or they'll come personally and deliver it and invite you to a support group, and they will provide all of their services. They'll describe them to you. And I went. I got the books. I read the books. I did everything I could to figure this out, and participated not only in the support group that visits or gets together monthly, but the now 12-week course that they offer, which is a series of classes on kind of the stages of you trying to survive this devastating experience. You know, how do you handle first holidays? How do you, what do you do for a memorial stone? What do you say when people ask you, why didn't you know? All those kinds of topics are brought up, and that is so incredibly helpful. So that is the single most thing, if I could drag anybody who is in that position to that series of classes, I certainly would.
Well, and our next class is actually starting on September 11th. So if anyone is interested in joining that, they can surely contact us at the Helpline Center.
Okay. Well, thank you both for joining us for Inside KELOLAND. I really appreciate that. And we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. Inside KELOLAND. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Inside KELOLAND. America is made up of a vast variety of nationalities, and for many, looking into our past of where our grandparents or great-grandparents came from is like unearthing a buried treasure. For some of the early settlers in Minnehaha County, their bloodline can be traced back to parts of Norway. Joining us today to talk about this piece of history is Tom Dempster. Thanks for joining us, Tom.
Barry, I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
And you were just back from a visit to Norway. Tell us about that.
Well, that was the second visit, and I don't want to tell you much about that now because I'm hoping that you'll invite me back in about 6 months from now.
You got more things to do about that.
Well, I do, because we took a sailboat there. We took a sailboat across the North Sea, across the Norwegian Sea, and into the Lofoten's, and I'm hoping that I can tell you about that at a later
date. All right, tell us about your first trip back to Norway then.
Well, the first trip was to Norway, and it was to the Lofoten Islands, which is an extraordinary place. And to get there, Perry, you go 1,600 miles north of Sioux Falls, and then you take a right turn and head 4,000 miles up to the Lofoten Islands. So by that time, you were well within the Arctic Circle.
Sure.
And we went there as a family. My wife and I took our oldest daughter and 2 of our grandchildren to the Lofotens. And we did that because that's where my grandfather was from, and we did that as a matter of wonder. We did that as a matter of gratitude, just simply to place our feet and place our grandchildren's feet on the land on the land that my grandfather came from. But what we found when we went there was something absolutely extraordinary. I don't think I've ever been to a place as profoundly beautiful as the Lofotens. The Lofotens is within a fjord, although a big fjord. It's about 350 miles long and maybe 50 miles across.
You took these pictures.
I did.
Are those reindeer?
Yeah, they are. They're, as we're going up to the Lofotens, wouldn't you expect that a herd of reindeer would be crossing the lake?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you
They
think
aren't
that
coyotes,
that would
I know that, right?
Yeah. But I mean, and one of the things that's extraordinary about the Lofotens is you've got this fjord, 350 miles long and about 50 miles across, but take a string of pearls and string that strand of pearls and surround that entire body of water with single strands of mountains surrounding the whole thing. Profoundly beautiful. And then what happens, and I think this was very unusual about what happens when we took our first ferry across, each of those mountains standing off and by its own, you've got the mountains standing like this, had clouds that were upside down on top of each mountain. It's simply extraordinary.
Now, what time of year did you go there?
Well, the first time that we were there was April, and I mean, one of the wonderful things about the Lofotens, and the reason that it's so important to us in South Dakota, is Ole Rovag took a 27-foot sailboat and fished there for 6 winters. Now, the Lofotens is a land of when you've got 24 hours of darkness in the summertime, and you've got 24 hours of light in the wintertime. And only Ole Rovag, author of the epic South Dakota novel Giants in the Earth, only Ole Rovog would describe his lands of the Lofoten's as where darkness, where ultimate darkness holds tryst with ultimate light. So all of a sudden, you find yourself in this place where your grandfather is from, and you've got people like Ole Rovog, and you've got people like Johann Boyer, who writes better about sailing than Herman Melville does.
Wow.
And you've got both of these people who have spent winters fishing in the Lofoten's on their 27-foot sailboats that write as deliciously about the Lofoten's as they do about North and South Dakota. I mean, that's why it's so important, because I hadn't realized that 37% of Minnehaha County's population had been born in Norway in 1900, but I certainly hadn't realized the depth of understanding of the writings of Johann Boyer and Ole Rovog, of understanding this beautiful part of the world and this beautiful part of the world that we call North and South Dakota, and the immigrant experience. It's really delicious.
So you must feel being on the land of your ancestors must really give you some kind of an otherworldly feel for the land.
Well,
in some ways.
It's like anything. I mean, you know, when you take up a pen or when you take up a camera and you start digging, you find things unexpected. Yes, I totally expected to be in the land of my grandfather, and it was really fun because my granddaughter, when she got back to her school, she tells her school, "What did you do there?" She says, "Well, we found my family's church in the Lofoten's," and I'm going, "Well, she gets it." Yeah, I mean, so that's a delicious thing, but that's a matter of homage, and that's a matter of gratitude. But what you find also there is this gorgeous part of the world with all of this depth and all of this resonance and all of this importance to South Dakota.
And you're going to go back there again?
Well, I am going to go back there again. As a photographer, one of the wonderful parts about the Lofoten's is in the summertime, you have 24 hours of light. So that means, and the sun is about 20 degrees lower than what our sun is in South Dakota. That means in the summertime, you've got 12 or 13 hours of perpetual sunset and perpetual sunrise.
Wow.
And so you can only imagine what that does when you've got that oceanic environment, when you've got the clouds of the mountains, when you've got all that water moving in and out, you've got all that water in the atmosphere. It's just, I mean, you see colors there that you've never seen in your life before. It's just, you know, and the 2 times that I've been there, both times I've hardly been able to take a breath.
Well, take a breath right now.
Well,
stay right here, because we're going to
great.
take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Tom Dempster. Stay with us. Welcome back to Inside KELOLAND. Tonight we're talking about some of the heritage of Sioux Falls that traces back to Norway. Joining us on this topic is Tom Dempster. Thanks for coming back here.
Delighted to be here.
And what
Thank you
about,
again.
talk about, you just recently had a talk about your visit to Norway at Augustana University. Tell us about that.
Well, I did, and it was the Center for Western Studies on their Saturday morning program. And typically, that's a smaller group of people, and you'd expect maybe 5 to 15 people. And lo and behold, it was standing room only. I'm going to 75 to 100 people or something like that. We were pulling in chairs and tables and all those sorts of things. But it tells you the commitment to their constituency, and certainly the commitment of Augustana, University with the Center for Western Studies that they have to the heritage. I mean, as I may have mentioned, Ole Rovog's house that he wrote, where he penned Giants in the Earth, is on our campus.
Yeah, yeah. Are you planning on giving other talks in the future?
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really fun for me to do, and it's fun for me to show the video, and certainly will be fun for me to show the next video, because these are important and fun and resonant things.
Yeah. And you talked about this amazing statistic that in 1900, 37% of Sioux Falls population came from Norway.
37% of Minnehaha County population was Norwegian born. So then you can just imagine, as you'd walk in front of the Carpenter Hotel or whatever, you can only imagine what the conversations on Main and Phillips Avenue would be. I mean, it's very significant.
Well, what brought so many Norwegians here to Minnehaha County?
Well, everything. Norway lost about 30% of their population during that immigrant era. It was hard times in Norway. I think that was the Bering Bank crisis, so there was a worldwide recession. Times were hard. In Norway, there had been a very substantial population increase in the preceding 100 years, and lo and behold, there were too many people and not enough land. Typically, if you were the oldest son, that would mean that you would inherit the farm. But if you were anybody else, that you were pretty much left to yourself to make your living. So many Norwegians, my grandfather included, had to borrow his passage to South Dakota from his uncle, and you can imagine how much money that he had in his pockets when he came into South Dakota. Absolutely nothing other than, and one of the other primary motivating forces is life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness and property, the American dream. An incredible force throughout the world. You
worry that we're losing our ties to our ancestors' past in some ways?
Harry, I mean, that's why our trip was one of homage and one of gratitude, is just to recognize all of these extraordinary things that our ancestors have done to get us here. Had my grandfather not done that, we would not, or had my grandfather not done that, my family would not be. I mean, it's just extraordinary. I have, today is the last day of the Sumatra tour, of the professional golf tour. I've got 2 golfers from Thailand. One of the things that I asked her, I said, well, tell me about your mother. She said, well, my mother owns some bus lines. Tell me about your grandfather. She says, oh, my grandfather came from China when he was 12 years old, and all he had was a blanket and a pillow. And I go, man, these stories are just the same the world wide over, aren't they?
Yeah. And we've been looking at videos and pictures that people can see those. We'll have a link to those pictures on KELOLAND.com.
Oh, good, wonderful, good.
Yeah, and again, talk about the importance of families getting into reconnecting with their roots in this.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a gratitude thing and an homage thing of saying, hey, thanks for doing this extraordinary thing of coming all the way from this profoundly beautiful land to North and South Dakota.
To face an uncertain future, right?
Absolutely, to face an uncertain future, and that's one of the things about Ole Rolvåg's book. I mean, the title of the book, I would think would have been Giants of the Earth.
But it's Giants in the Earth.
It's Giants in the Earth.
What does that signify?
Many of them did not succeed in their quest.
Yeah.
Many of them gave their lives for future generations. Truly, truly the story of immigrants worldwide.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Tom
thanks again for having me here.
You bet. And we're going to take a quick break. Inside KELOLAND, we'll be right back. You can find out more about today's topics online and at KELOLAND.com. Just click on the Inside KELOLAND section. That's all the time we have for today. Be sure to join us again next week for more on what's going on inside KELOLAND.